Well, to discuss this further, we're being joined by Iraq War veteran Mike Preisner from San Francisco. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV. Now, an average of 18 veterans committing suicide every day. What does this tell you?
Well, this is really a massive number, and this is just the veterans who are out of the military. I mean, this isn't counting the scourge of suicide in the active duty ranks of the military, where more active duty soldiers are killing themselves than are being killed in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. And what this reveals is that despite the mantras by the politicians of supporting the troops and caring about its soldiers, actually they don't care about us at all, because all it would take is some simple funding, some real attention to these mental health care issues to solve this crisis, but the government simply is not doing it. And the other point that this shows is that this epidemic of suicides among Iraq and Afghanistan veterans and among active duty soldiers right now isn't happening because we're being sent to these countries to help anyone or build roads and schools, as these politicians like to say. These suicides are happening because these are brutal occupations against a civilian population that young men and women who had no other choice but to join the military because they couldn't afford the college and couldn't get a job have been made to take part in.
Right, Mr. Preisner, you're a war veteran yourself. You're within the system. Do you think that the criticism that's coming from the court to the Department of Veterans Affairs is adequate?
Well, it's just one step, and there really needs to be a drastic overhaul in mental health care for veterans. But the main cause of these suicides is constant, repeated deployments to two wars that we have no reason to fight. And now the United States is in a situation where it's in endless wars. I mean, occupations in Iraq and Afghanistan are permanent occupations where soldiers are going to be subjected to permanent combat. And what's happened over the past decade is that it has put such a strain on the rank-and-file military that it's led to these record-breaking numbers of suicides. And so really, of course, changes in the mental health care system will help, but the only solution to end this epidemic is withdrawing all of the soldiers from these two wars.
Well, in our earlier news piece, we just reported that the U.S. has said that the war in Afghanistan is far from over, even after the announcement of Osama bin Laden's death. In the light of these comments, how do you respond with the conditions of veterans that are coming home from Afghanistan and Iraq?
Well, you know, that announcement is absolutely not surprising at all, because the war in Afghanistan has nothing to do with fighting al-Qaeda. Even the Bush administration at the outset said that they were not very concerned with finding bin Laden. Leon Panetta, the head of the CIA, soon to be the new Secretary of Defense, said that there's probably 50 to 100 al-Qaeda operatives in Afghanistan. I mean, this is a very small number. So the war was never about al-Qaeda to begin with. The war is about securing a network of military bases to exert dominance over a very strategic, very resource-rich region of the world. But for U.S. soldiers, the death of bin Laden really means absolutely nothing to us. We're going to continue to be killed and maimed, subjected to psychological trauma in these wars. You know, since the 9/11 attacks, over 6,000 U.S. soldiers have died in this so-called war on terror. Tens of thousands more have been maimed, and hundreds of thousands have come home with this psychological trauma. So the U.S. government announcing that they're going to continue to send these troops to Afghanistan reveals that the war is not this war on terror, as they would like to say. It's a war for empire. It's a war for global domination. A war that people in the military have absolutely no reason to fight, especially with the care they're getting when they return.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. That was Iraq War veteran Mike Preisner speaking to us from San Francisco. Many thanks for your insight here on Press TV, sir.